questions that are individual for each of our speakers. I'll be inviting you in turn to, I'll be basically trying to read them out, and I'll invite each speaker in turn to comment on them. But also, we actually have some questions which are common to all the speakers. And I thought maybe we'll start with those. These are very common questions that maybe each of the speakers has an opinion about. So I think I'll be starting with those first before I ask Kari to answer her individual questions. So, see, we still have now 1 minute left of the poll before I publish it. So I'd like to invite Ole Petter, Kari, and Laurent to see on the screen. You have these 3 common questions. One of them is, how do you feel we best can renovate old apartment buildings to nearly zero emission building standards? Of course, as you know, European Union has ambitions to decarbonize the whole building sector within I don't know, 1, 2, or 3 decades from now, which is extremely ambitious. And we also have the second question is related to what solutions we have for urban dwellings with poor outdoor air quality. And the last question is related to this trend where there's one possible solution for these urban dwellings rehabilitating is putting in these decentralized ventilation units. So the poll has now closed. See, I'll publish them now. Just bear with me. Great. There we published them. I think it should be possible now for everyone to see that on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a large number of people from all over Europe, and not just Nordic countries, we're actually a minority, Asia and North America. We also have one question. It seems that the most common type, or question 2, most common type of solution for new dwellings you feel is going to be basically centralized balanced ventilation with heat recovery, but also it's a slight interest for maybe basically mechanical extract without heat recovery. For maybe these are for countries with warmer climate. When it comes to now rehabilitating to NZEB as a large spread, centralized, maybe decentralized balanced ventilation are maybe the most common ones. Also interest for people envisage also that nearly zero emission buildings still going to have mechanical extract with and without heat recovery. That's a bit of a surprising result, actually. We have a lot of people are there is a general trend about problem with overheating in bedrooms, but it's many people are unsure about that. And we have yeah, I think there's a general kind of feedback about the fact that the building regulations are an important measure here to improve air quality, things like low emission materials, etc. But I would like now to invite our speakers. If you look on the screen, the main screen now, we have these 4 questions, and I think it's basically the first interview. Kari, Ole Petter, Laurent, you're welcome to answer question 1. No takers for question 1. How can we best renovate ventilation of old buildings to nearly zero emission building standards or zero energy building standards?
Yeah, I was talking to a closed mic. I was referring to my one of my last slides in the presentations that we do have a project where we did prefabrication of elements for making it easier to renovate old apartment buildings. 70% of the existing building stock is energy inefficient, and the ventilation, the upgrading rate is too slow. But one way to overcome this is prefabricated elements using integrated ductwork for the supply air, and then at the same time also introducing PV as a part of the new construction. Then it's not always easy to get totally high standard solution, but we are moving in the right direction because existing slab on ground is not always possible to do something about, and the shape of the building and so on is there.
Okay. I was wondering, thank you, Kari. Ole Petter, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Now, I know your professional focus is new buildings. I'm aware of that. And do you have any opinions about the challenge when it comes to question one?
The question one, I believe for existing building, if they are not placed in a very polluted area, it will be easiest to renovate with decentralized ventilation, because then you can kind of pick up the fresh air on the facade and maybe also dump the polluted air on the facade. Because if you need to do new ductworks all through the buildings, then it's hard to renovate when you need space to all the ducts and everything. But some of the really problem with renovating existing apartment buildings in Norway is that it's the inhabitants that owns the buildings, and if they need to move out to do this renovation, they will refuse the renovation, and then we go on using a lot of energy in our apartment buildings.
This leads naturally to question 3, because there is some kind of uncertainty about these so-called decentralized room ventilation units. You know, there are different products, so it's difficult to generalize.
I'm not talking about decentralized room ventilation.
Okay.
I'm talking about ventilation unit that holds one apartment each. Instead of a centralized that takes all the apartments in the building.
I understand. So as a developer, you would more go for basically these units that ventilate the whole dwelling, not these wall-mounted units.
These wall-mounted units, I don't believe that they are very useful, because, as it says, you need to have extract air from the bathrooms, and then you need to have air supply for the bathroom ventilation. So, and then how do you get hold of the energy that goes with the exhaust air from the bathroom? Then you're more or less back to the Swedish solution with the mechanical ventilation with the heat pump on the exhaust air.
Thank you, Ole Petter. Laurent, I would like to. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
What are your comments to this discussion so far?
Yeah, renovation is always a complex question, and for me it depends how deep is the renovation and what are the ambitions. Because if you are kind of renovating everything inside the buildings, that you can take the chance to place your ducts correctly for the balanced mechanical ventilation. So this is the first context, but you can have also the context where people are not so ambitious and would like to renovate with a lower budget or step by step, and there's it's much more challenging to have this ventilation inside the building. So I don't have a fixed answer, but I would say that for deep renovation, a good, let's say, a good design, so a good contact and communication with good designer architects would make it possible without big problems. But the challenge is more when you have a lower budget renovation.
Well, let's say that as most of the attendees today are basically from Europe, we have extremely ambitious plans to decarbonize the whole basically buildings mass. And basically what it means is that all rehabilitation has to be deep to achieve these goals, unless we have a political solution in terms of basically keeping the existing building mass and just solving these issues in terms of renewable energy production instead. But considering ventilation as a part of this solution, maybe you've got a point, Laurent, that we can actually we have to focus on only these deep solutions for ventilation, and you have a lot of room to maneuver here. You had I think we will look at the other questions for everyone, because I don't want to chat here. I want to invite Kari. Are you there? Kari? Hello? Hi. Question 4. You see, is demand control extraction ventilation usual in refurbishment projects? Do you have any comments to that?
Demand control extraction ventilation.
It could be moisture, I suppose. It could be CO2 or temperature. Obviously, some form of feedback system.
Yeah, of course, demand control is possible and it's used, but not necessarily only with the extract ventilation. We would like to go for the deep renovation and balanced ventilation as the standard solution, if possible.
So basically, you don't need to have the moisture control, just constant flow rate.
Oh, you mean for the bathrooms?
The question is related to some form of demand control extraction. It could be to the fact, as part of course, the bathroom is a part of this issue, isn't it? Because you have to control the moisture there.
Yeah, this is going to be a good presentation in the next webinar, where we go in more details for the moisture and the possibilities. So I would like to invite everybody to follow this presentation and listen to all the details in this webinar.
So that basically question 4 will be answered next week in terms of solutions for moisture control in bathrooms.
Yes.
Okay. Then we would like to, if Kari, you can scroll up to the top, and we have just a few minutes left. Of course, all these questions will be answered in the report, but we would like to pick Kari. Would you like to pick one or two most relevant questions here to answer?
Yeah, well, one easy question is the question number 2 for the high and the low flow rates in kitchen. The common forced ventilation, increased ventilation in Norway is 108 cubic meter per hour, which we know is normally a low rate. The common, more used rate is 250 cubic meters and upwards, and then we see flow rates in 600, 700, 800, 900 cubic meters per hour, which I think is really high.
Maybe it's a bit related to question 3, also related to kitchen ventilation, I would understand. When you have, let's say you may have a extractor hood or recycling hood in the kitchen, but doesn't actually extract moisture. That has a buffering effect. But question 3 is asking, do you still need some kind of ceiling level background ventilation to control the moisture?
Yeah, we think so, that if you use recirculating cooker hoods, you should have a general extract from the kitchen so you can have more control of the humidity, or at least you maybe need to have control through the bathroom if it's a small apartment.
So, for example, the Norwegian regulations have they stipulate 10 liters per second as a minimum flow rate.
Yeah, we have the basic,
background.
and then we have the increased for cooker hoods.
Any other questions you'd like to answer before we move on to Ole Petter's questions? Kari.
We also have to keep track on time, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll move on. Ole Petter, you have a question here. Can you still use exhaust cooker hoods, or do you only use recirculation hoods in Selvaag's projects?
We only use exhaust cooker hoods. We have rarely installed the recirculated cooker hoods. I believe we have done it in a few apartments on customers' demand.
And the reasons for that decision?
How the regulation, how the regulation are written and understood in among the professionals around, they always raise a problem if people want to have recirculated cooker hoods. So it's the easiest way of getting around. And we also rarely have cooker islands because that often gives then you need higher air volumes, and if you have a centralized system, you can't. It's not available that amount of air that you need to have through this cooker hood, because more. It's quite often the cooker hood goes into the rest of the system.
So if I understand you right, Selvaag uses basically mechanical exhaust cooker hoods.
Yes.
Are they going through the heat exchanger, or are they going straight out the wall?
They're going to the heat exchanger.
Okay. And the reason for this is because you want it's a little bit to do with the regulations. You want to make sure you're not supplying anything which is substandard, and also to ensure that all the new homeowners are happy with the solution and won't complain about issues related to, for example, noise, high flow rates and stuff. Yeah. Okay. Laurent, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we don't have much time, but I would invite you to pick one or two of your favorite questions here.
Okay, all the questions are interesting, but let's say we'll take question number 2, which is the opening of this hot colder bedroom is a question of air quality, or so the studies have shown that the surveys that people are very satisfied with the indoor air quality in bedrooms, but it's really a problem of temperature. And that when they have been asked about their motivation to open window in bedrooms, it's really the temperature that is the driving motivation. So they seem to be very satisfied about the indoor air quality in bedrooms, and that it's not the motivation for opening windows.
Laurent, temperature, is it the respiratory temperature, as in the experience of breathing in fresh air, or is it to do with the actual thermal comfort of the body as a whole? Because the latter can be solved by, if you look at point number 3, not having thick duvet, Yeah, so we can actually kind of get the experience of being cooler with thinner linen. As I did, for example, in the UK, that traditionally have had kind of like thin bed sheets.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Is that here, okay, as engineer, we address the question from a technical point of view, but when we look at the statistics, so like the first graph I showed, so this trend to have colder bedrooms is more pronounced for people older than 45. So it has something with the age, something with the culture, and it's true that the change of the habits may solve the problem, basically. Yes. And in some projects, yes, some habitants have shown already a change of their habits in time.
Fascinating. Question 4, strategy D. In practice, how to do it? 2 air handling units for each dwelling. Let's say, as Ole Petter said, they have like in each individual apartment has its air handling unit. So now you need 2.
Yeah, but maybe I was a bit unfortunate with the use of terms I used. So for the analysis, it was more conceptual, but in practice, I would say that I was more thinking about this room-based ventilation for bedrooms. Like you would have the one main balanced mechanical ventilation for the living areas, and for some bedrooms, room units.
Okay, a little wall-mounted unit for each bedroom.
At least for some of them, yeah.
Okay, yeah.